Good evening and welcome. You're coming from Dollard?
No, I live in Hampstead, but I could come.
You could come.
I came from Dollard.
Wow.
Wow. Dedicated.
That's dedication.
It is.
That's dedication. When's the Bat Mitzvah celebrate? 14th of June. Beautiful. They're the best program ever. Have they started already or this is the first?
No, they started.
So you guys know about it? Okay.
It's my third time around.
You're familiar face, that's why. So you know, if it's a good thing, right? You're the best advertisement, you came back. Alrighty folks, so you too. So we're going to just review an overview of what the kids will be learning. That's the objective tonight, right? Okay, so first a word about Bat Mitzvah. What does it mean? When you just close the door, please, on the way out. So Bat means daughter of, Mitzvah means? Anybody? Good deed. Any other suggestions?
Commandment.
Yeah, it actually doesn't mean good deed. It means commandment. Mitzvah means commandment. In Yiddish and in local parlance, it's become to mean, do a mitzvah, do a good deed, because commandments are, of course, only good deeds. But it means a commandment, like fasting Yom Kippur, giving charity, whatever. There's a whole long list. So, Bat Mitzvah means, Bar Mitzvah means son of a commandment. It's in Aramaic, not Hebrew. Bat is both Aramaic and Hebrew for that matter. And it means at this point, this child now becomes obligated to fulfill the commandments. Daughter or son of the commandments. That's what it means. It means the point of obligation. So your daughters will be learning some of the key mitzvot or commandments in Judaism, in the Torah. First, a little insight into the expression bat or bar mitzvah. So my question to you is, now that you've learned that mitzvah means commandment, what's the opposite of a commandment? It starts with a T or an S. Transgression. Commandment is God says something, I command you to do. The opposite is when a violation or a transgression or a sin. So here's the interesting thing. When it comes to mitzvahs, which we're talking about, once we become adults, we're called a son or daughter of a mitzvah. What if somebody chooses not to do mitzvahs? I don't want to do the commandments. I want to do what I want, which equals transgression. So you would think that the opposite of a son or a daughter of a mitzvah would be the inverse, son or daughter of a transgression. The Hebrew word for transgression is avera. If anybody knows Hebrew, avera. So someone who sins, male, you would think would be the opposite. Bar avera, a female who sins, bat avera, which is the exact inverse of loyalty to God, bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah. You would think that would be the language, but it's not. When it comes to mitzvot, it's bar and bat. When it comes to sins, the language of the Torah, of our sages, is Baal Avera, which means the possessor of a sin, or the owner of a sin. So the question is, why isn't the language balanced? In other words, this is good, this is bad. So you're son of good, daughter of good, son or daughter of bad. No, it's son or daughter of good, owner of good or bad. Why does the language change? Why does the description of the person change from when describing good choices to describing a life or a bad choice? Questions clear? Answer. When you say you own something, on the one hand it means you own and you're responsible. On the other hand, it's not me, I own it. I can get rid of it. I can sell it, I can give it away, I can throw it away. So that's the very deep message here. Mitzvahs, that's who I am. When I do a mitzvah, I'm expressing me. It's in my DNA, son or daughter. I inherit, it's bequeathed to me. As a Jew, this is all part of my identity, the mitzvahs. Sins are alien to me. So when I transgress, I've acquired something negative, and I can just as easily let it go through renouncing it, repentance, teshuvah. And therefore the language is not the same. Because mitzvahs are forever, They express who I am. Sins are transient because in the end, we are confident we'll clean up our act. And they're not me, they're something I acquire, and I can let them go. So it's a very powerful message just in those words, Bat Mitzvah or Bar Mitzvah, when we consider the opposite. We're telling our child it isn't about assuming all kinds of obligations and becoming something. Religious, observant, whatever. Pious. No, it's not about becoming, it's who I am. It's about expressing who I am in a mature, responsible way. And sins, we're all human, we're going to transgress, we're going to fail, we're going to stumble, but that doesn't define me. I renounce it, move on, learn from my mistakes and transgressions, and grow in life. Clear? So that's introduction to the very language of Bar and Bat Mitzvah. Let's talk about some of the things that children will be learning. I think Shabbat is obviously one of them. Right? So just again, brief definition of the various themes. So Shabbat, what's Shabbat all about? At this table this morning, was it this morning? Yes, it was. I was sitting right here, and around the table was sitting a group of future security. Oh, here's our list. Great. Shabbat Candles specifically. Okay. And future security people. They're going to be hired by various Hampstead, Kotzi, look, whatever, Utramo. And so the head of Hampstead Security is bringing, I don't know how he got the job, but bringing them around to visit clerics and rabbis and imams and priests in all of the communities to sensitize them to what that community is going to be that they may end up serving. They came here to get the Jewish perspective. So one of the questions and one of the discussions was about the Shabbat. I did point out that, Jews, it's not a homogeneous community. There's all kinds of degrees of observance, from nothing to we'll call it ultra, and don't expect just because they're Jewish, they fall into they don't. But here, nonetheless, are the various Jewish ideals. So what's Shabbat all about? And when I finished, the response was, we should be doing that. That's wonderful. What's Shabbat? So superficially, well, today we can't do a whole lot of things. And while that's true, that hardly conveys what Shabbat is all about. So as I explained to them, observant Jews on Shabbat are not going to handle their phones, no technology, not driving, unless, of course, it's an emergency, and if life is in danger, all laws are suspended because life is supreme. That's God's commandment. But otherwise, normally, none of this on Shabbat. Expect that. Why, was the question. Answer. Shabbat is the day when God says, hands off my world. It's not yours. It's mine. So once a week, we set up all of our electricity, everything before, and we can enjoy all the benefits of our creativity, but hands off so you can, on this day, connect to each other, God, community, and contemplate why I'm here. So that the 6 days of the whirlwind of creativity and production, there's a purpose for it all. Because if we don't contemplate the purpose, it can become a very dangerous thing. You can become enslaved to it, to making money or whatever it is. Worse than that, we can enslave others in our pursuit for materialism. You're in my way, so either you come on board or get rid of you, metaphorically, one way or another. So Shabbat says, remember, God says, your life isn't yours, the world isn't yours. It's all a gift. I've entrusted it to you to use in the most sacred and meaningful way. To share, to fix, repair, heal the world, not destroy it. We're here on a mission. And every week, the word Shabbat actually means to rest. If you rearrange the letters of Shabbat, you get the word tashu, which means to return. In Hebrew letters, we do that, words. You rearrange the letters, you get another word. Bingo, it sheds light on the original word. It's all divine, so there's endless meanings. So Shabbat is tashuv, you can hear it. It means to return. Go back within. Connect to the soul within. Family. So I was telling them, imagine, it's 24 hours and there's no cell phone. You know how healthy, what a blessing that is? You actually talk to each other. You look at each other. I don't have to tell you, our kids today, going out, take a picture, same table in a restaurant, they're all on their phones. No one's talking to each other. And that's not just, they're not talking, so what? This isn't the time and place to go into this, but this is a real crisis that's deepening with every passing day, creating severe neurosis and crippling our children emotionally, physically, and with the ability to be able to interact with the real world when the crunch comes. They live in a fantasy, pseudo, superficial, hide behind images world. Not surprisingly, suicide rate is skyrocketing amongst girls especially. And a big part of it is this, big part. So Shabbat is hands off. Natural day, family day, community day, day of God. So then when you pick up that phone on Saturday night or Sunday morning, there's a purpose for it all. It's a wonderful tool if it's used properly, like everything is. So that's the essence of Shabbat. So all of this don't do stuff, it's not restrictive. It actually liberates us from entanglement in the world, and a day to nurture our souls, family, and so on. One of the topics here is also neshama, soul. Your goals to learn about the soul. Briefly, what are we as human beings? Is this talking to you now? Well, it's obviously through the body, but it's not the body. There's something in the body, the personality, the energy. As a rabbi, unfortunately, I'm too often present at death, the moment of death. And invariably the reaction is always the same by the people that are there. He's gone or she's gone. I've never heard anybody say, over, finished. The person doesn't exist. The instinctual reaction is gone. Without having learned anything about metaphysics or souls or anything, it's just instinctual because it's true. The person has gone. We don't know where. Actually, we do if we study the Torah. It's not a physical place, but they're gone. So the soul is what animates the body. What your children will learn about is that there are, in fact, let me try to get some
Water?
Yeah, thank you. All right. We have, in fact, two souls. Two souls. One is called the animating soul, and that's what animates the physicality. It's the part of us that's about survival, physical needs, fairly simple needs, which we complicate, but fairly simple. It's called animal, the animal soul, because like the animal is not aware of anything else other than I'm hungry, I need to relieve myself, I want to mate, simple needs of the animal. So to the animal, human animal soul is also that way, kind of selfish, me, now, instant gratification, and it's fused with the body, so it's all physical. Then there's the godly soul. The animal soul is selfish, the godly soul is selfless. The godly soul are the natural instincts we have to, there's more to life, there's meaning, purpose, serve God, the higher aspirations. And there's the struggle between the two for control over our lives. Selfish or godly. On the subject of the souls, friends, there are a few hundred books in our library, just on the soul alone. And we teach that a lot here. Hasidic philosophy, Kabbalah, is all about the soulful dimension of Judaism, the human being, and life. The inner dimension, not beyond the five senses. I just said a few things, but you get some sense of these two energies, one invested in the other. They're invested in each other. They're not two separate things, so it's different layers of consciousness. We're basically born selfish. We're born with the animal soul dominating. All we know is me. We've got to learn as we get older, there's somebody else in the world, and there's then even responsibilities and so on. Learning about otherness comes later. That's maturity. The more others figure in my life, the more mature I am. The more my life revolves around me, the more childish I am. So we're born childish, and at 12 and 13, that's why they're learning this, that's when the godly soul really starts to kick in and peek its way through consciousness. It can be ignored, but it can be embraced. The higher aspirations, service, truth, transcendence, devotion, sacrifice, all these noble dimensions of the human being in totality, they come from the godly soul. And at 12 and 13, that's why it's the age of Bat Mitzvah and Bar Mitzvah. That's the age when that soul now starts to make its presence felt. It's been super conscious or subconscious till then, starts to peek through, and that's why at that point we start to become responsible. Children aren't, because they're just selfish creatures. So we have to contain them. Can't entrust them with choices too much. They're going to make the selfish choice. Unless there's a very careful training that trains them that the selfish choice is really good for you. The right choice is really good for you. It's all going to be based on self for a kid. Reward. It's all about reward and gain. Most people never get beyond that. The whole life is about what's in it for me. But at age 12, 13, at least the potential begins for not what's in it for me, but what's the objective truth. What's in it for you? Self-transcendence. That's the godly soul. It's a lifelong struggle between the two. It's the human mind that chooses. But when does the struggle really begin? At 12 and 13. That's what maturity means. The ability to be able to make the selfless choice, not the selfish choice. What else is on the cards here? Tzedaka. Let's talk about Sadaqa. Well, Tzedaka means charity. That's fairly simple and straightforward. But here's a couple of basic rules. Charity is actually not the correct translation of the word tzedakah. Tzedakah does not mean charity, because charity means this is my dollar and I'm Mr. or Mrs. or Miss Nice Guy and I give it to the poor. And that's not tzedakah. The word tzedakah comes from the word tzaddik, which means the right thing to do. Not the charitable thing, the right thing. My money is not mine. Nothing is mine. It's all entrusted. True, I worked hard for it. Others work harder and don't make a living. So ultimately, it's God's blessing. My life, my children, my money, everything is a gift. There's no entitlement to anything. I was born thanks to my parents. My very being isn't thanks to me. And of course, God, the third partner. So in Judaism, there's no entitlement. Everything is to be appreciated and a gift. Every breath we take, for that matter. And certainly our possessions. So God says, your money, everything, I'm entrusting it to you. Now when it comes to your income, I'm telling you now, says the good book, 10% is the minimum you give to the poor or the needy, whatever hospital, whatever cause. When you do that, you're giving tzedakah. It's the right thing. If we don't, we're holding on to it. It's ill-gotten. We haven't done the right thing. Now, 10% is the minimum of our income. That's Jewish law. When I give beyond 10%, that's already charity. I'm not commanded to do that. I can rightfully keep it for myself, because the Creator said 90% you can keep for you, but 10% you cannot keep. It's mine. I'm telling you, give it to those who need. When you give more than the 10%, that's when we would use the word charity, or in Hebrew, we'd call that gemilut chasadim, acts of kindness, benevolence, etc. But the Hebrew word for tzedakah really conveys a powerful message. You're no hero, you're no martyr, you're no Mr. Nice Guy. You're just a decent human being. You're doing the right thing when you give 10% of your income, which you have by God's grace, to those not as fortunate as you. It's just the proper, correct, it's justice. Tzedakah means justice. It's a very important principle, and we can't teach that early enough. It's the right thing to do. We are privileged that we have plenty. Many others do not. The only reason we have it is because God says, I could give it directly, but that'd be too easy. I want you to partner with me. I want man to partner with me in fixing a broken world. So when we do the right thing, we're partnering with Hashem. We're actually giving that which He's allotted to us to begin with to those less fortunate. That's tzedakah. Let's talk about what's next on the list. Shabbat Candles is within Shabbat. So a word about Shabbat Candles. Shabbat Candles is the way we usher Shabbat into the world. Why do we light? What's the meaning of the candles? Very simple meaning is, on Shabbat, we are to enjoy family, Shabbat meal together, and so on. So to enjoy thoroughly, you need light. So you enjoy a meal. You know, as you all know, in a restaurant, it's not just the food, it's the whole presentation. The visuals is a big part of the way we enjoy. So seeing the tablecloth, the set, the white tablecloth, the gleaming Kiddush cup, and the candlesticks, and the challah, and so on, seeing it all enhances our enjoyment, which we are commanded to do, is delight on Shabbat. So you need light, therefore the mitzvah to light candles. Not just the meal, but also not to stumble over anything in the house. This is before the days of electricity. So therefore, the lighting of candles, simple meaning, to bring light Friday night so that we enjoy our family union, our get-together, our meal, and we can see and not trip over things. But it's also a spiritual thing. Physical candles, but they emanate spiritual light. Shabbat is about spiritual light. As I said earlier, it's the day to contemplate that there's a creator. Why am I here? What's the purpose? Step back, connect to family. So it's a day of spiritual light and enlightenment. Therefore, we physically light the candles. 2 candles minimum for a married woman. Why 2 candles? Because there are 2 places in the Torah where we are commanded to observe Shabbat. One place it says, remember and observe it. The other place is, respect it and don't transgress it. So these 2 commandments, the positive and the negative, represented by the 2 candles. Also, if she's married, husband and wife. It's customary, by not law, but widespread custom. With each child, you add another candle. So you have 3 children, it's 5 candles, and so on. Now what's fascinating is that who lights the Shabbat candles is the woman. If there's no woman, he's single, or his wife is out of town, like my wife will be this weekend because we were blessed yesterday with a grandchild. Thank you, Mazel Tov. Chai, my oldest daughter, had a little boy, so Nachama is going for a week. I'll be joining there for the bris, God willing, next Monday. Not so far off. Anyway, so she's gone. I'll be lighting Shabbos candles at my home on Friday night. But if there is a woman, she does, because it's really her thing. Why? Because you light it in the home, and the woman makes the home. The whole atmosphere, the home, the essential upbringing, everything that a home gives really is entrusted to her hands. So she lights the candles. Moreover, she embodies Shabbat. The female embodies Shabbat. The male embodies the weekday. Why am I saying this? This is a very deep and beautiful concept, which I only have a few minutes to address. If you'd like to, we can devote some other time to it, if it piques your interest. So here is just, again, the teaser for this whole Shabbat weekday men-women thing. So let me begin this little teaser by saying this. The difference between men and women explained in Kabbalah, in Torah, is, to summarize it in almost a cutesy kind of way, women are, men do. Guys are about performance, acquisitions, and women about being. Let's kind of elaborate for a moment. I want to bring you back to the very first story in the Bible, in the Torah. And that's, well, almost the first story. That's the creation of man and woman. So let's see, how did it all begin? Man, Adam, male, was created from the earth. Ever since then, every male harbors a very deep fear he's going to collapse into nothingness. He needs props. What's the props? His performance. Whether it's sports, whether it's money, whether it's religion, whether it's scholarship. The uniform, whatever that uniform might be, he needs that to define himself. He's defined by externalities, things he did or will do. It's about achieving goals. Sports is very big for men, not just because you can kill each other and it's legal. It's not just a legal coliseum, but the idea of, winning. It's the winner. Achieved the goal, proven, performed. She looks at it and, what the difference appointed. It's the game, isn't it? The spirit of the game. What's the spirit of the game? It's who wins or who loses. That's the bottom line. This is the classic male-female difference. I just should add that in Judaism, no such thing as men and women separately. We're all multi-sexual. It's just what dominates. That's a separate discussion. No such thing as a homosexual or a heterosexual or a bisexual. No such thing in Judaism. We are all multi-sexual. It's a question of which sexual component dominates. So you have men that can be very feminine and women that are very masculine, and endless mixes in between, because we are all a microcosm of the universe. We are male, female, animal, plant, stardust, everything. And that explains lots of things. But that's just in parenthesis. Back to the male-female, which I'm separating for purposes of clarity, but it's not black and white. There are some men that are more female and some, but we're separating the ideas, So we're saying, the classic, almost stereotypical male again is about performance. Guys bond by shared activities. They're fishing for 3 hours, never exchanged a word, but they bonded. And if they do talk, we'll talk about sports, politics, all kinds of things. Women talk about themselves. They share themselves. Eve comes into the world not from dust and earth. She doesn't have that fear of collapsing into nothing, because she doesn't come into the world that way. What does she want? When she came into the world, there was Adam. She doesn't want to be alone. That's her need, not to be alone. The male is okay kind of being alone, because the first male was alone, and then Eve came and said, who's that? What's that? And God says, she's a wife, you got to marry. What does that mean? This was like, there's somebody else and marry, and we're shocked to the entire system. For Eve, it's no shock. She comes into being, and right away, he's there. In fact, she comes from his side. So to share herself in marriage comes very naturally. So the difference is, again, that classically, end of the day, he comes home, the last thing he wants to talk about is what happened at work. He doesn't want to share the work day. If he shares the day and she's going to give him constructive how to help him, good. There's an end goal. We'll talk about it and then we're going to score. Good. Just to share, he doesn't understand this. And she wants to share what happened during the day. She wants to hear during the day a phone call. Hi honey, how are you? Love you. And he says, do I have to say it? Of course I love her. Why am I working? He gives a whole list of proofs. True. Share it. But what's the point? It's known, I'm not achieving. It's not about achieving, it's about the actual relationship, about bonding. That's what she needs. He needs compliments. Things he does, he needs validation. The props. For the woman, like you did that, of course you do that. It's normal, you clean up, you put things away. For him, there's nothing that he does that's normal. Everything is about an achievement. So he cleans up, puts the dishes away, applause, fantastic, give him a medal, because that's the guy. The guy needs validation for his performance, big or small. And for her, like, what? This is ridiculous. So marriage is each one of you transcending your own need and meeting the other one. So she's got to transcend her own feminine state and compliment, which doesn't, why should you? It's silly. It's obvious. He needs it. Give it to him. He's got to share, I love you, and be romantic, where it's not about accomplishing anything, just sharing yourself with her, not your need, it's hers. So give it to her. And therein is one of the secrets to a successful marriage, where each one gives the other one what they need, even though it's not mine. And therein lies the beauty. Transcending self and meeting somebody else's need, that's when you really bond. As opposed to swallowing up the other one, which is what happens in marriages, and they don't last. Quick little story. This actually happened, and not here but the old MTC. This couple came to see me, very wealthy, Marriage is on the rocks. He's mystified and she's had it. What's the problem? Like he starts speaking first. He says, Rabbi, look how she's dressed, the car she drove in, the vacations, the restaurants, the envy of 99% of the world. I'm a perfect husband, provider. And look at her jewelry. And he points out something she's wearing. And in frustration, she takes it off and slams it on the table and says, I don't want this. What? He says. I know you like these things. Turns out a very simple problem. All the jewelry, it's all the stuff he likes to see her in. He never asked the question, honey, where do you want to go? What do you want? Could have saved a fortune? Could have spent more? Doesn't matter, just kidding. The point is, a relationship is meeting somebody else's need. Not giving you what I think you should get because that looks good next to me. It's a trophy. But that's an extreme example, but very often that's what our marriages are. If marriage is how you're going to fulfill my need, it's the opposite of what marriage is. It's how can I serve you? Then we're really bonding. And the happiest the marriage, we both are this way. I'll just tell you something else. In a case where it's only coming one way, eventually the other one will respond. You can't be in a relationship where someone is so selfless and serving and then the other one eventually doesn't respond. It's wonderful if they're both on the same page, understand what marriage is. It's about service, self-transcendence, serving you, filling your need, the privilege to be married to you. They both get it. That's beautiful. And if only one does, stay the course. The other one will respond. Because that's human nature. You can't respond to selfishness and remain selfish. You will open up back. So I love you tragically means I love the way you make me feel. That's not love. That's swallowing up the other person and actually abuse. I love the way you make me feel, so I'm just using you. Okay, not abuse, use. But use leads to abuse very easily. That's not love. Love is the privilege to be married to you and to fulfill your need, whether it's mine or not. And especially if it's not mine, then it's pure. Then I'm really connecting to you. Especially I don't understand why you need this. You asked, that's enough. So how do we get into that? Men do, women are. These are the two differences. So Shabbat isn't about doing. We started saying the weekday is the male thing because weekday is about doing, fixing, tinkering. Shabbat's about being. We don't go anywhere, we go inwards. It's about relationships, connections. That's the female thing. So she lights the Shabbat candles because she really is Shabbat. So metaphorically, Friday night, when we welcome the Shabbat, we welcome her and we say, I use the word her, we welcome the Shabbat bride, not groom. Or sometimes the Shabbat queen, not king. Because Shabbat is the feminine day of the week. It's about being, and it's way beyond the performance and doing, which is the male thing. Shabbat's the sacred day. The weekdays are not. So you just heard now that in Judaism, the sexes are not equal. The female is much higher. But you say, but Rabbi, what about the tefillin and all that? That's the point. Tefillin's about performance. All these male rituals, even religiously, fulfill the male need to define himself religiously by performance. Men do Jewish things. Women are Jewish. Who defines if your child is Jewish or not? Exclusively the mother. What does the father give? The tribal affiliation, a Kohen, the uniform, the function, the performance. From mother we get unconditional love. She gives of her own self for 9 months, not getting anything back, giving her very life, not knowing, there's no interaction. Being, the child is literally part of her. So from mother we get unconditional love. Father, traditionally, it's about expectation, goals, performance. You need both. Again, not black and white. Mother's father and father's mother. There needs to be this pollination and diffusion. But I'm just separating the two for clarity. Some dads in the extreme can't relate to the kids till they can throw a baseball. Kid doesn't do anything. You hold the baby. Now what? After 5 minutes, There's no now what, just hold. But what, no, not going, not do, hold. He has to learn that. Nurturing, being, to think a guy doesn't come easy to the guy. He's got to learn that. So when I said before, she is the home, she is the home. Because what's a home? A home is you're loved unconditionally because you exist, not because you're cute, funny, beautiful, or clever and did well in school. That's the performance thing. That's the male dimension, which is necessary. We've got to perform. We've got to do things in life and accomplish. But that's the school, the sports arena. Home is a feminine thing. You are loved because you are, and that's why she is the home. And she is the Shabbat. And she lights the candles that bring this spirit of Shabbat to the home. Vusnach, what else? Oh, honoring parents. That's a very important, we're not going to cover all of it, I don't think, but honoring parents is very, very important, and that is we don't honor our parents because they're nice. It's a big bonus if they're nice, and they should be. You honor parents because you're obligated to. You came into the world through them one way or another, and you would not have survived without them one way or another. And even if a child was taken away immediately from birth, he or she would still have to honor his parents by the mere fact that they were chosen by God to be the partners to bring you into the world. I'm not sure if a kid's going to be told this, but I'm going to tell you, because you are all wonderful parents, but there are terrible parents. Torah doesn't say you have to like them or love them. If they're likable and lovable, then you will. You don't have to be commanded. What you have to be commanded is to respect and honor, and that's kind of a forever thing. No matter who they are, they brought you into the world, you honor and you respect, because again, the Almighty chose them to produce you, so that's an eternal debt of gratitude that earns respect and honor, not necessarily love. If they're lovable, yeah. There's lots of very important laws I hope they're going to teach the children about the practicalities of honoring parents. Like, you never sit on your father or your mother's chair if they have a designated place at the table. There's a way we speak to parents and don't speak. They're very healthy laws. The problem nowadays often is that as parents, we want to be our children's friends. We're not their buddies. That's not our role. Our role is to be a parent. And parent is actually a verb. To parent is a verb. Our role is to guide them, to instruct them, to instill a sense of responsibility. That means as parents we've got to let them fall. We're going to keep on propping them up. We're doing them no favor. They'll be ill-equipped to face the world, the real world, when we get out there. There's a wonderful book written by, come to me in a moment, it's called The Blessings of a Bruised Knee. No one read the book? Famous author, come to me in a moment. Point is, the kid falls and fall, bruise, that's part of life. As parents, you have to allow the kids to become confident and autonomous. And not to be afraid if they don't like you at the moment, right now. Discipline is not easy because you want to be their friends. And we have this fear, if we don't be nice, their friends, they're going to reject us. They're not rejecting us. Kids actually they feel safe when there's rules and discipline. They feel safe. It's a cocoon. It's clear what yes, what not ambiguous. You hold your ground, there's no negotiation, you're firm. We never say things like, don't talk to me like that. No, it's a child doesn't talk to a parent that way. It's not about me, it's about your responsibility to honoring parents. Not you or any child talks to any parent that way. Shifted from personal head-to-head to responsibility, what's the right thing. We don't talk to a parent that way, and then you don't respond. I'm just throwing this out here. There's not a parenting session, but it's all part of honoring parents. It's a two-way street. You're honoring parents, and parents have to be, God willing, parents. And then it's a lot easier to honor and respect them. What I'm just suggesting now is that kids want discipline. Deep down. They want an orderly, disciplined life. On a very physical level, giving to your kid bedtime, okay, stay up. No, at the end of the day, the kid knows this is the bedtime, they get into bed, sleep. The structure is important. Not just physical structure, but moral structure. There's the way we speak, the way we behave. Mother makes a supper, you eat it because she made it. That's it. I'm not telling you to do this, but when I was a kid, I don't do this with my own children. That's just how we're being affected by this laissez-faire permissiveness that's destroying our families, but it's crept in. But as a kid, I didn't leave, not that long ago, did not leave the table till I asked permission. Without saying, thank you very much for the lovely meal, may I please leave the table. That was the mantra. And if you hadn't finished, the answer was no. And you meant sitting there for an hour, sat for an hour. Mommy made it, you eat it. That was it. Maybe extreme for today, but the principle is sound. They're not our friends, they're our children, our charges. We're in charge. And we've got to parent and set the ground rules and stick to them, because kids are very clever at finding the openings and negotiating. Don't open that door if it's the right thing. All right, modesty. Gewalt already 8:15. So modesty. Modesty is a big, big subject, and it means all kinds of things. It means humility, but it also means, and that's obvious, and humility, let's address that for a minute. Here's a fascinating statement. The Torah says, the Bible says, that Moses was the most humble person that ever walked the face of the earth. He'd be in this room, he'd feel humbled before you and me and everybody. The question is, how's it possible? Moses, he knew what he'd done. He's the most famous person in history, the most influential. The Torah was given, the great religions are all rooted in Judaism. How could he be the most humble person, humble in the presence of you and I? Very simple calculation he made. If God would give you my IQ, my parents, my opportunities, you would have done a better job. So he knew what he accomplished. He knew what he accomplished. But what he knew was that he accomplished all of that based on gifts that were given to him. Can't take credit for that, for my looks, my upbringing, any talent, my intelligence, my ability to paint. I used it. So somebody else, given this talent and ability, would use it even better. So in that sense, and you're using the talents given to you, Moses reasons, more than I'm using necessarily the talents given to me. So he's humble. So that's one level of modesty. And that's true. That's a true attitude that we all need to have. And we can truly be humble in the presence of somebody else that we can see doing a terrible thing. But then we realize their background, what they came from, their opportunities. I probably would have done worse if I had that. So why feel superior? No justification. But there's also modesty in dress. So just a word about that. You all know that in Judaism, there's the modest dress for women and for men for that matter. Now here's the thing. Because we live in a Western society, which is a Christian society, whether we like it or not, we're very influenced by Christian, hence Western thinking. In Christianity, the body is the enemy. Sex is the enemy. We're all born in sin. The Christian attitude is, better you shouldn't do it. If you have to, at least get married. Now, you all know it doesn't work. What's happening in both the nuns and the priests. It's the most unnatural thing to be celibate, but that's been going on for thousands of years. What's their philosophy? It's very simple. You want a relationship with God? God's spiritual. You got to renounce the physical. No sex, fasting, vows of silence, abstinence, etc. What's the idea? This is the way you climb the ladder to heaven. That's the Christian attitude. So physical pleasure and desire, that's the enemy. We're born in sin by virtue of the fact that we're born through a sexual act. That's the Christian attitude. You believe in you know who, and he's going to redeem you. Judaism says, no. Sorry. Christianity is rooted in Judaism. You got this one wrong. The body is not the enemy. The body is God's creation just as much as the soul is. It's not the enemy. In fact, the biggest celebration in Jewish life, the biggest simcha, is a wedding. It's more than any holiday. And what's a wedding? A man and woman come together. And it's not just to have children. That's a separate mitzvah. Intimacy, being together, husband and wife, is a commandment in its own right. After the childbearing or child conceiving years, they don't divorce and separate. You probably know that. They remain married. Did you know that? We don't divorce after. No. That tells you that the marriage is not simply about having children, because even when they're not having children anymore, they still remain together. It's about the sanctity of the body. The body is a creation of God, and in fact it's sacred, and that's why it's covered. It's not flaunted, it's not a piece of meat, it's not a means by which to get attention. It's an intimate, sacred part of me. Consider the Torah. The Torah is the holiest object in Judaism. It's not on display. It's covered in a mantle, It's in an ark, and when it's taken out, when it is, tenderly, very carefully, and kissed, and only exposed, and then put back. We're ashamed of the Torah. Why isn't it exposed? That's why. Because it's sacred and precious, it's not flaunted. So my body is a very intimate, sacred, divine part of me. It's not on show. That's why it's covered. Covered gracefully and beautifully and respectfully. Beauty, especially for women, is a part of it in beautiful dress. But there's beauty and it's provocative. There is elegance, and then there is opposite. Being crass and treating the body again as a hook to get somebody's attention. It's tragic. We've got to tell our children that you are a valuable, infinite, precious human being. You don't have to sell yourself for a piece of skin. And your skin and your body is sacred too. And you will share that, the kids are young, but the idea is you will share that with your soulmate one day, uninhibited, as 101 equals 1, but not available to the rest of the world. Not available. Only for my soulmate. So it's a critical thing. It's not because we're ashamed, not because it's bad. It's the opposite. It's because of its sanctity and preciousness that it's not flaunted or exposed. So that's a little bit about modesty. Then there's kosher, a word about kosher. They'll learn some of the details of what's kosher and what's not, but what's the underpinning of kosher? Why does God care what we eat? As long as you eat like a decent human being and appreciate where it's coming from, what difference does it make? Meat, milk, mixed, what's this whole business? So the truth is, that's a very, very big subject, of course, to explain. But we'll just say this now, and that is, what kosher does is it sanctifies the food. The whole purpose of life, friends, you ready for a drum roll? It's to reveal God within the body, within nature, to sanctify this physical world. Again, the opposite of Christianity. This world's the enemy to overcome and earn your place in heaven. In Judaism, it's the other way around. Bring heaven down to earth. Reveal the divine within the body, within nature. So we do fast, but rarely. It's mainly eat Jewish. That's more critical than fast. Yom Kippur is once a year. Every week is Shabbat and other holidays. Because the whole point is to find God, connect to Him in nature, in the body, in the physical. So food and drink can just be survival. It can be gluttonous, it can be all kinds of things. But when it's kosher, we engage in food and drink in the way that God has commanded us in the Torah, we connect to God through this moment. We elevate, we sanctify the food. We make this physical moment a meaningful moment. We imbue it with holiness. That's the idea of kosher in a nutshell. There's many, many other dimensions. For example, kosher meat. What are the signs of a kosher animal? There's two signs. It's to chew its cud and have split hooves. Doesn't have those two signs, not kosher. The pig has split hooves, doesn't chew its cud. The rabbit, for example, chewed its cud, doesn't have split hooves, so not kosher. Just to cite two common examples. Now there's a profound message there. First of all, it has to have split hooves. What's the message spiritually? A hoof means the animal doesn't walk on with its paws on the ground. Message, our life should not be defined exclusively by the physical and the material. Got to live elevated lives. But then the hoof is split. Not elevated where you renounce the physical, but you engage the physical by elevating it. So we're both immanent within the world and transcendent simultaneously. So sexuality, but not an end for itself, is a means by which to connect soul to soul, oneness. Or food, blessings, kosher, the physical becomes the means by which to connect to the spiritual. Or in other words, we spiritualize the physical. So we're above and engaged. Hoof, but engaged. Not living in ivory towers or fasting on a mountaintop in meditation. Sanctify my world, says God. Engage it. But do it from a position of transcendence, a higher purpose. Don't be defined by the physical reality per se. Chewing the cud, that means before you get involved in anything in the world, chew it over carefully. The world's not the enemy. It doesn't mean every opportunity is for you. Someone else can go there, engage it, and elevate it. If I go there, I might become part of the problem rather than the solution. So chewing the cud is, yes, the physical world is there to spiritualize, but be careful and be discriminate where you live, what kind of business, to make sure that you can be the light there and elevate rather than contribute to the materialism per se, etc. That's a bit about kosher. And then kind of covered everything. Decisions making. That goes in with maturity, responsibility. We spoke about that. And then challah. 2 minutes to go. So challah is basically as follows. The word challah means a portion. That's what it means. It refers specifically to a portion of dough that's separated from a larger batch. That's what challah means. A separated piece from a larger batch. What's the story here? When the temple existed back in the temple times, when Mashiach comes, it'll be reinstituted. The Kohanim, the priestly class, did not work. They were the spiritual leaders, and they were provided for by all kinds of tithes and contributions made by the general populace. One of the many things that the Kohanim subsisted on was anytime dough was made, they would get a batch of it to take home and make their bread. That's the mitzvah of challah. Nowadays we don't have a temple, the Kohanim are no longer functioning, we don't give the challah to the Kohen, this piece of dough, but to remember the mitzvah, if you make X amount, it's only a larger volume, not your average cake, it's like, you would know.
5 cups of flour.
If you make one batch of flour with 5 cups of flour, then that would warrant separating a small symbolic piece, which is simply put in the oven and disposed of, to recall that in olden times, this would be given to the Kohen. But there's a spiritual message here as well, and there are many, but that we will leave for your children to tell you when they learn about it, because we've run out of time. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if you'd like another time or whatever, we could possibly do that. 8:30, your kids finish, right?
Yep.
It's open to questions for the last minute or so, or 3 or 4, as long as you like. We're good? L'chaim? Yes?
Is there a calendar of lectures that you give here? And how do we find out?
Yeah, right now the way things work is my lectures are online. It used to be every Wednesday night. But now they're online, so Jewish.tv is a few hundred of them. Do you work during the day?
I do.
You do? Okay, because there's a class every Tuesday at 11. It's not going to help you. For a women's class in particular. On Shabbat I speak. And there's a women's class during the summer, Shabbat afternoon, and I speak during the morning service. But right now, in terms of attending a lecture, I just have to say the only way really is online. And there's lots of stuff. Jewish.tv has many wonderful speakers too. Men, women, a host of topics covering everything in Judaism. It's worthwhile exploring. You'll find lots of good stuff there. Not just lectures, mind you.
We have a
All kinds of
women's-
entertainment.
Women's supper and learn
Oh,
a couple times.
this is good. One coming up very soon.
Yeah, Hamantash and Bake, and there's always a
So-
small lecture and then a